Alrighty, here we go. Here's a big one. Residents voice frustrations during District 4 Public Safety Town Hall. And then they got a quote here. Your famous words are, I promise to look into it. Resident tell DA Gonzales. Okay, y'all need to do some editing here. Resident tells DA Gonzales. District Attorney Joe Gonzales it is. There was a town hall meeting last Monday, and the DA, Joe Gonzales, and McManus went to it. And I already know what happened. I've been to these things before. Basically, what happened was a lot of like explaining away things, but nobody came out of this thinking, you know what, they got this under control. Because basically, what's been going on lately is the cops were getting shot, like 5 officers within a week or 2 weeks, something like that, over the past few weeks. It was really over a couple of weeks, from what I recall. Residents who attended the meeting said they'd like to see more progress on getting serious criminals accountable for their crimes. Yeah, everybody in the city would, because we've taken this progressive, compassionate policy from the West Coast, and it seemed to have infiltrated. It's like a cancer eating its way through. You know, the judges, the DA, the prosecutors. Now the SAPD's hands are basically tied on a lot of things. Now I've talked to SAPD officers, more than a few, and I have stories myself about certain things that they go through when they're making an arrest. They write up the report. They take it to the intake prosecutor. Intake prosecutor will look at it, say, hey, this is a great report. Was there anything violent that happened? No. All right, we'll let the guy go because we're not going to even chase after this. We're not even going to prosecute this. That's from the mouths. I didn't hear that story once from a police officer. I heard it multiple times over multiple different types of offenses, mostly drug related. But, you know, they'll tell you, if you ever talk to police, I know everybody hate the cops, right? But not every cop is a terrible piece of garbage. That's just a fact. Not every retail employee is a terrible piece of garbage. Sure, people can talk nonsense about retail employees all they want, but I used to work retail. I wasn't a terrible person. I legitimately wanted to help people out. It made me feel good. With a lot of these structures, let me stick to what's going on here. Much of the frustration in the town hall meeting was towards the DA's office. Yeah, for a reason. For a few years, it's been towards him because he's had this title of "Let Him Go Joe." And why does he earn that title? Because most of the prosecution he does has the cases that they go after. They have a high percentage of wins, prosecutions, because they're cherry picking what they know will absolutely work in order to have a great track record. But I'll tell you what, that's not Joe Gonzales' fault that he's in office. That's the residents, that's the citizens that voted him in, not me. But I'm pointing to me because I'm a resident, I'm a citizen. You know, I live here in the city. I didn't vote for Joe Gonzales, but I know plenty of people that did. And they don't even want to, let's not be too harsh on him. We voted him in. Well, you know what? If you voted him in, you should be the most harsh on that politician or that elected official that is supposed to do a job and has decided that they're going to run their own way of, they're going to do it their own way and kind of, follow the rules, but the way that it will best work for them. Now, I personally questioned the DA during a meeting, a neighborhood association meeting, and I gave them feedback from a lot of the residents and where I live, a lot of the property owners where I live. And our problem is we call in crimes. The police will show up some of the time. Now, this is not a Joe Gonzales. This is a SAPD issue right here. Some of the times they'll show up and they'll say, well, you know what? They almost blame us for like, well, I think you're instigating this. We're instigating? If we're in our own property or we're not in our property at the time, don't try to accuse us of being the one causing the problem when it's people trespassing on our property, destroying our property, like damaging vehicles, breaking personal property, windows, air conditioners, trying to open up locked storage areas. It happened in my property before I was living here. I came to live here in order to help out with a family member that was unable to do that because there was so much garbage going on. And you know, we see the constant, because I'm near Haven for Hope. When Haven for Hope went in, it really brought down the quality of life for the people in the area, and it really raised the amount of drug crime that's going on and everything associated around that. When drug crime happens, it's not just drug crime, it's also trespassing and theft and stabbings and some shootings. You know, people say it's a big, you know, gun issue. Guess what? On the west side over here, inner west side, especially around the homeless, they're not homeless, they're junkies. A lot of them are junkies that are out on the street. And you know what? That even comes from the outreach person from Haven for Hope. There's a guy, he's bald, very dark skin, and he is one of the main guys. He's one of the few people that actually does outreach on a daily basis and knows these people. He knows the people that are out there. He used to be an addict a long time ago too. And he told us during one of the meetings, the people that you're talking about right now, which I already knew what he was going to say. He said, these are not people that want assistance. They're out there because they know that they can set the rules for themselves, and they're around because they don't want to follow anybody's rules. They don't want to get clean at that time. Maybe never, who knows? But they definitely don't want you butting in what they're doing. You know, these are people that are addicted, and they're going to be addicted, and they're going to stay there in an empty, abandoned lot or whatever it is, you know, bringing all kinds of trash and everything like that, and bringing other people like that to the area too, which then they disseminate out into the neighborhood and cause all kinds of issues. They're going to keep doing that for as long as they want to do. Because we decided to go soft on crime. We decided as a nation, apparently, that we lost the drug war. That pisses me off when people say we lost it. You don't lose something that's never ending, first off. You do decide to give up. And that's mostly what people decided. They're like, you know what? We feel too compassionate about the people that have been, you know, arrested for drug-related crimes. We feel that, you know, some bad things have been happening, too much bad stuff, too many people incarcerated that too long, you know, that kind of stuff. And we need to backtrack and go the other way around about this. We need to be compassionate and realize that they're human beings too, and that, you know, they deserve dignity and respect. I agree that every human being needs dignity and respect. The problem is when you put criminals above the citizens, the taxpayers, why aren't we given the dignity and respect that we deserve? Why are we the ones that are supposed to, oh, look, you know, I remember going to one neighborhood meeting, and one of the guys there that he does a lot of good work in the area he's at, and some of the other people, they were all like, well, you know, they're more afraid of you more often than I'm like, really? Like the two guys earlier that I had to get out of my back street here that were doing a drug deal, they're more afraid of me? I don't really think so. You know why? Most of the times they have a gun or a knife on them, and they don't care. They don't care about me. They're going to do their drug. They might try to do it right there, smoke their fentanyl, and leave all their their foil around, just right there on the back fence, because they don't care. They'll do literally whatever they want to do. Gotta check something here. Sorry if these videos have like weird jump cuts or something like that. It's because I've got, and I'm looking this way. It's because this is where my cameras are on this other monitor. And anytime something happens that I know I need to go to attend to, this is my life. I'm like, you know, I didn't join the military. I didn't become a police officer. I thought I was having a life, you know, and then I come to this area, and I've lived in all different parts. Southeast side, I grew up. I know crime. I know drugs. I know gang violence. I know about all that stuff. I grew up around stuff like that. Section 8 stuff, I grew up around it. Trailer park, yeah, I remember being there when I was a kid, you know, living there. I know what this stuff looks like, and I know a lot of the reasons why people do the things that they're going to do. And having compassion for every single person when they're running a game on you makes you the mark, by the way. You need to pay attention to what's actually happening, what actions are actually taking place, and and understand the history of what this person's doing, so you can properly dole out the consequences that are needed. And that's what's not happening. That's what this article was about. Here's a guy saying, I've been in constant contacts with the DA's office since the murder of his loved one in 2022, and they haven't heard back from them. Apparently DA said, I promise to look into it. 3 years later, I'm waiting for that call. This is a common thing when you talk to people, city officials, you try to contact them, they will often just ignore you. What you have to do is you just have to be you have to be a bulldog about it and just never let go and constantly go after them. And it sucks, because why should you have to do that? Because I guess one thing would be, well, we have so many cases to handle, we can't possibly spend all our time on your case. Well, you're gonna at some point, right? I remember Joe Gonzales, DA Joe Gonzales, he said that how he handled his office was, when he got into office, it was a big mess. LaHood was the DA before him. He said the office was run so inefficiently and it was a huge mess. There were so many court cases on the docket, and then COVID hit and really screwed things up. I don't disagree with that. I do know that that was a fact, that it really pushed court cases back. And so rather than dealing with these smaller crimes, they were mainly and mostly going after violent crimes, violent criminals. So that meant property crimes, don't really care. Joe Gonzales instituted the cite and release stuff, even without any kind of it's a policy. So it's not on the record, but it's a policy where rather than actually arresting people for things like property crimes up to a certain point, they're just going to go and say, hey, that's a bad boy. And maybe they won't even cite him. And I know in the case of at least one guy here on my street, that's exactly what happens. This guy has never gotten a ticket. He's never been cited. He's never been arrested. And every so often they'll talk to maybe the father. Maybe sometimes they'll talk to him if they catch him, because he runs like a little punk ass. What good is it doing? He's not a boy. He's like 23, 24 years old. Goes around with all the druggies and brings all that stuff to the street. We're all a bunch of hardworking people here where I'm at, and trying to maintain some level of order. Kids can't even go out there and play on the streets. That kind of stuff. Yeah, kids. Well, here's the thing. We're also next to an elementary school. And then, are you going to go out there when you see druggies looking on the street under cars for a stash that they dropped because a cop was coming by? Well, which is rare, but this did happen the other day. When a cop's coming by and they throw their stash real quick, and then they come back later on, they're looking under everybody's cars and vehicles with, coming out with flashlights sometimes if it's early morning or late at night, sending other people, other junkies to come look up and down the street to, is that a little crack rock? Is that a little bag of, is that a little tinfoil of fentanyl? This is stuff I see, I record. This is stuff I've shown to SAPD. I don't do anything about it. And it's hard to even blame them when I know that they're understaffed by 1,500 to 2,000 officers. Oh, but we're getting a record number of officers this year. 100. Good job. Good job. Good job. 100 officers. That'll do it. That'll do it. That'll get, in these comments that you'll see down here on these articles, people complain, oh, well, I never see any patrols. Yeah, because everybody decided they were going to hate the cops, remember? Remember? Compassion for the criminal. You got to worry about, some guy that was selling fentanyl to somebody and that probably killed somebody at some point. But you got to worry about that guy because, you can't put him away for 10 to 15, 20 years. That's unfair to him. No matter their lives that were ruined by him, dishing out that fentanyl laced drug, or maybe he gave the wrong drug, or it was imbalanced properly. You can't bother with those issues. You got to have compassion about what that guy's life's going to be like later. Forget all the ones that he affected by selling drugs, including the people in the community, by bringing all the violence and making it to where people can't feel safe to sleep at night, can't feel safe to go out and even cut their own grass, because you got all this manner of chaos going on. Compassion for the criminal. That's the age we're in right now. How's that working out for us? Well, apparently this is how it's working out for us. Where the chief of police McManus and the DA are both pointing fingers at each other. It's your fault you're not prosecuting. And the DA is like, here's the DA addressing criticism over here from the SAPD chief and SAPOA about habitual offenders. See, because the people that shot these cops, they were violent. They had violent felony warrants, multiple, in fact. And Joe Gonzales' thing was like, well, you know, we couldn't, when it came time for it, we couldn't find the witness, or they changed their mind. Or it turned out we couldn't really get that evidence or whatever. You know, in some of these instances, it's like, why is video the only thing that matters? And in the case of like crime on my street, sometimes video doesn't even matter at all. We've turned in video and a detective will come out and be like, I don't know, it seems like you guys are a little too organized. Isn't that what you want? Isn't what happened to see something, say something, see something now, do something, but when we do something, we're the ones that are going to get arrested, the law-abiding citizens, because we're defending ourselves. So anyway, going back to this, you know, here we go. Again, we have another officer in the hospital being shot by an individual. They're trying to arrest and take off the streets, you know. And Joe Gonzales is like, look, I set these guys up for you to catch, and you just didn't find them in time. That's the problem. Well, maybe it's because they don't have the staffing for it. Look at this. Below is a list of the 7 criminal cases brought to the DA involving the suspect that were dismissed, according to Gonzales. Now, you got to remember, Gonzales is fighting for his job right now because not only are the people calling him, let him go Joe, but you've got state reps coming after him. Look, blood's in the water, and these politicians and elected officials see an opportunity to make themselves look good and make another politician look bad, you know. So don't get it wrong when you see these political factions fighting that they're doing it for your good. They're not. They don't care about what's going on. If they cared, they wouldn't have waited until 5 officers were shot within a few weeks, because we've been telling them for years at this point that crime has gone up and up and up and up and up, and the level of consequence has gone down, 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 to where we are, as residents, we feel like we're the ones in jail, in our own yards, in our own houses. I mean, shit, I read articles where like guys out there watering his own grass and get shot by some random person. Nobody wants to read that. And it's just crazy stuff. So let's look at some of these cases. See, if they can prove that Joe Gonzales did not do his job in prosecuting, Abbott signed, I think it was House Bill 17 or something like that, HB 17 or HB 7, that basically says you can take the DA out of office if you can prove that he is not doing his job. And that includes on things like small amounts of drugs, which Joe Gonzales walked back some of that sign and release stuff that he had instituted when he got in office, where they weren't going to go after, you know, some of these cases where there was a small amount of drugs. You know, where there's nobody wants to be caught with a small amount of drugs. Maybe don't carry it with you. I don't know. I'm sorry. Like, if it's a known illegal thing, you're taking that risk, man. Should you go to jail for like 10 to 15 years because you had a small amount of drugs? I don't think so. At the same time, we don't know what a person's... We should be doing this based on... You know, we have a court system. We have a judicial system that has a rule set that already should have this laid out, you know, based on case history. Now, we're going to get into based on case history type stuff. There's a couple more articles tied into this, so we'll get there. Here, aggravated assault with deadly weapon, unable to locate victim, case dismissed. Maybe that person got threatened and they said, you know what? It ain't worth living here. I'm out. Here's another one. Family violence assault, missing victim complaint. Once again, person not around, case dismissed. Here's another one. Arson of habitation, meaning burning a building or a house or maybe even a car. Couldn't locate complainant. Didn't have critical witness to prove arson, case dismissed. So things happening, people not wanting to get out there for whatever reason. They don't want to talk. They don't, you know, that's a big issue that we have on the west side. People don't really want to talk. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, because they don't see the policing that they expect if they do report a crime. Number two, they often get told, chastised, well, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be defending yourself with the gun. You shouldn't be, threatening somebody that's threatening to come onto your property. You were the aggressor in this because even though you were on your property and these people threatened you with a gun, it's your fault. That happened to me, actually. Some guys on the back street were looking at my security stuff and pointing it out. And I was telling them, like, hey, I just got some stuff stolen. And the guy was like, well, you're accusing us? I'm like, did I say that? But of course he was the whole political narrative of like, hey, I'm black. And so, I'm going to use that whole, I'm walking down the street. I was like, no one ever say, I knew this guy lived a few houses down. And so I was telling him because I never talked to him. I talked to all my neighbors. None of my neighbors have ever, looked at me like, the hell are you trying to say? They're just like, oh man, cool. Like, yeah, we'll look out for each other. Everybody has said, hey, we'll look out for each other. This guy jumps to, oh, you're threatening me? Anytime anybody jumps at you for talking to them, there's something not right. They're hiding something. They don't want you to talk to them because they don't want you noticing them. So, they can point out all the stuff in my yard all they want, and I'm on my property. I'll say what I want too. Because a lot of times, we have thefts around here too. It is my responsibility as a property owner to do something about my property, not wait for the police to show up when there's no crime happening at the time. I am proactively policing my property. I know it's an idea that's gone out of style, but you got to do what you got to do because, what's that saying? When trouble happens, the police are minutes away. Well, it doesn't take minutes. Some of the time a call will go through, it takes 30 minutes, it takes an hour, or they just won't show up. And this is based on multiple calls I've made over a year for a variety of different things, all heavy crime related, guys with weapons, guys with drugs, that they're doing drugs, people passed out in the middle of the street, that kind of thing, which is more of a health issue to them. Drug deals going on in vehicles that are showing up, all kinds of stuff like that, I'm not talking about like, oh, my neighbor was watering a little too much. We don't have those kind of issues here. We don't have those kind of issues here on the Inner West Side. We have real issues. Yes. Just earlier this year, somebody got shot going in somebody else's yard. And who was it? It was a guy that I had reported because he had stolen from a neighbor. I helped a neighbor. I set up a security light for them. Guy gets up about 2:40 in the morning, climbs up on the fence and rips the security light off of a tree that was probably like a good 12 feet up in the air. Like, I'm talking like, hey, whatever they think they can make a buck off of in order to get high, that's what happens. Anyways, I'm really off topic here. Let's get back to it. Evading arrest with a vehicle, insufficient evidence to go forward. DA never received video detailing chase from law enforcement. So because they didn't get the video, the detailed chase from law enforcement, because they don't take law enforcement's account on its own, they have to have video. Apparently a police officer participating in a chase is not good enough. What does that say to you? That says I'm not taking a case that I can't 100% absolutely nail so I can make myself look as good as possible to the public. Look at my arrest. Like when I talked to the DA, Joe Gonzales, he was like, well, it shows crimes are down. I'm like, yeah. You know why crimes are down? Because the police aren't bothering anymore. They know that they're not going to get a prosecution on somebody walking down the street with a gun. They know it's got to have to be like a violent issue. They know because they go and talk to the intake prosecutor, and the intake prosecutor determines, it's the one that we're going to go with. Now, Joe Gonzales was like, well, I need to maybe talk to those. And I was like, yeah, here's the thing. Every one of those people that is under you as a good leader, you take responsibility for. That's training that they're supposed to be getting from you or from the people that are directly under you. So crime could show lower stats because you know why? Nobody's calling in things. The police aren't citing anybody. They're not writing up a report. I mean, I had one officer the other day that I know respond to me by email saying, well, we only see a couple of calls on this guy. I'm like, bro, you know me. What are you talking about? It's aggravating. It's like in order to get anything done, you have to cover yourself and them, you know. It's like you have to record everything. Like, do we need cameras in our brains, like, you know, where we can download things to everybody? And that probably wouldn't be enough. Aggravated assault with deadly weapon. The victim was an individual who was sentenced to prison. So, okay. By the time the DA's office located him and reached out asking for cooperation, he wasn't interested. Okay, so this is a guy in prison that decided he didn't want to follow up on the aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. So we know he's a prisoner. So, I don't know, maybe take care of it, you know, figure it out. He have his original testimony. I guess that wasn't good enough. I don't know. Terroristic threat, active warrant, not arrested. So they had an active warrant. So therefore, because there was already a warrant on a person to say, hey, go pick him up, they decided, you know what, that's good enough. We're not going to like, hey, escalate this any further. It's already escalated to where we need it to be. That's what I'm taking from that as a citizen. I'm not criticizing necessarily because I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. Aggravated assault against public servant, case filed by Somerset Police Department, active warrant, not arrested. Once again, another issue of there was nothing really done because, well, we already know we got to catch them. So aggravated assault against a public servant, that makes you wonder, why didn't they just arrest him at that time? That's a good question, which is pretty much what DA says here. He says, you know, that you should have gotten them yourself. That's what this next article is about here. SAPD's jobs to search for him. Bexar County DA responds to chief's comments after officer shot by wanted man. Basically, the DA saying, look, I'm putting these things up. Boom, boom, boom. Y'all are the one dropping the ball. And this also goes back to, like, how many officers do we have to be dedicated to these things? I know there's different teams, and I know they also shut down certain teams. So certain teams are overloaded with work because we're short about 1,500 to 2,000 officers. That's just looking at other major cities, looking at the population that we have, looking at the amount of crime that we have, and looking at the active on-duty patrol officers that we have versus desk jobs. Look it up. It's not hard to look up. You know, you go to SAPD's website. They tell you the total amount is like 3,100 something or other officers, with about 1,100 being active patrol. So when people ask, why don't I ever see patrol buys? Because they're busy. Now, what you can do is ask the substation, hey, can I get extra patrol buys over here? I'm seeing all this crime going on. And I would recommend calling and talking to the safe officer and asking them, because they've told me, yeah, we can escalate it to like extra patrol buys, which is like for a 2-week period. We'll send more officers to pass through that area. They're not necessarily going to sit there and scope things out, but they'll pass through. And even though people are critical, such as Terry Castillo and others, of the whole idea that presence does anything, it does work. People do less crime when there's cops around. Now, they say, well, you know, violent crime, it doesn't go down. You know why violent crime, it's hard to stop violent crime? Because generally people are going to do it regardless. They're emotional about it in the moment, or they accidentally, I know that sounds crazy, they did something that they actually didn't mean. Like a robbery where somebody had a gun, and out of their own adrenaline spike and even fear, they shot somebody because maybe they were going to get killed, or maybe they just freaked out. You know, there actually is, there's something there. It happens to homeowners too, when they, you know, overreact to something, not realizing, you know, what the actual situation is. So, you know, they go into one of the guys here, charged with attempted capital murder of a police officer, violation of bond, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. His bonds total more than $1 million. People are like, well, why are they giving them bonds, or why aren't they giving them high enough bonds? Well, the bonds are set. I know the DA can recommend certain amount of bond, value amount. They can even recommend, hey, let's not give a bond to this guy. But the judges are the ones that set the bonds. And the judges basically say, let's go to that one. The judges, there's a couple of them that wanted to get on camera, so they basically say, let's look at this one here. In the recent months, some of the county judges have been criticized for issuing low bonds or letting repeat offenders out on probation. Two Bexar County judges tailcase out what they're doing with their respective courts. Judge Rosie Speedland Gonzales, and that's Court 13, and 226 District Court Judge Velia Meza want the public to know that they, along with their fellow judges, are working hard, but it's not always in their hands to act on a case if they don't get alerted to all of the circumstances. What does that sound like? Number one, that immediately sounds like, well, it's not my job. Somebody, yeah. Now, I've been in the position where I have not been informed for certain things, and it definitely wasn't my fault, but as a judge in a leadership position, if you know that that's the issue, maybe you should start making adjustments to start making sure that these things don't happen or happen less often, especially if you're able to pinpoint what the problem is. So let's go into this a little bit more. For instance, when an offender violates bond or probation, they need to be alerted about it, the judges that is, but they say that often does not happen. I can tell you that I've seen in my court, and what I have seen in my court is that there is stuff happening that nobody is alerting us to. Once they do alert us, we do something about it, Meza said. So Gonzales said there is a lack of communication between the different departments. So Gonzales, not Joe Gonzales, not the DA, but Rosie Speedland Gonzales from County Court 13. So we can't move forward, she says, without information from the executive branch, from the county officials. So once there's one right there. Hey, they got to do their job, right? We can't move without that information from the district attorney's office. So there goes another one. Hey, they got to do their part, the prosecutor. So there's two fingers already being pointed. While the two judges say they can't speak on behalf of the entire judiciary, because they can't, because there's only two of them, they say in their respective courts, when an offender continues to violate bond, they do something about it. As they should. I'm glad they do. That's good. That's what we need. As a judge, personally, the defendant is telling me that they're not going to follow these orders, basically repeat offenders. And I've got a great concern about the rest of the community. So I will remand you with that bond, Gonzales said. Meza said another issue she is seeing is the delay in indictments from the state, which is creating repeat offender situations. Basically slowing of, cases or something like that. Like, hey, once again, so we got one finger pointing over here, another finger pointing over there to the DA. Now we got one pointing at the state saying, hey, look, you're being slow. While they're on bond waiting for that indictment, if that indictment doesn't come quickly, like in the first 6 to 9 months, which I do agree, that seems like a long time. And they're waiting for over a year, 18 months, sometimes 2 years. Yeah, whatever happened to the right to a speedy trial, whatever. What is happening is that these, which is a joke, that stuff doesn't, it's a nice thing put in there, but it's just a nice thing said. What is happening is that creates an opportunity for them to reoffend. Right, of course. So that they're pinpointing right there another problem that they understand, and they have a clear understanding of what a problem is. If they know that there's an offender that's going to have issues, they follow up on it, apparently. And then here they've got somebody that's got a bond that could be up to 2 years in some cases, which is definitely the extremes. They say sometimes in 2 years. So anytime you read anything like this, it's usually the extremes that they're going to point out, because they know that's going to get some kind of attention. Understandable. Everybody does it because we're trying to get, concern, focused on what's going on. So here, if they know that type of offense, though, that whatever the bond is, whatever the indictment they're waiting on, maybe they should set, a higher bond in that case, or maybe recommend no bond. It's especially if it's something like, gang violence, cartel violence, drug violence. And yeah, definitely a lot of cartel violence here in the city. The two are watching Monday's town hall with the district attorney and SAPD chief closely and hope they can put aside issues and put the community first. So they're making themselves look good. Look, it ain't us, guys. We are your judges, for the people, by the people. We are here for you. It's these three other parts. Actually, now they're throwing the SAPD in there too. We're not going to resolve issues if we have people in leadership positions who don't want to face the media and answer some questions. At least I don't know, but I'll find out. They can talk for 3 hours, but if the attendees at that town hall meeting walk away still not feeling safe, then you just wasted 3 hours. Gonzales, you nailed it on the head. I take back anything that sounded critical. That's not true. But it doesn't take a dummy. It doesn't take a genius. Any dummy can say, you know what? If you sat there and you just blah, 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 and nothing actually came up resolution, of course you're going to walk away feeling like it was wasted hours. It doesn't take a judge to understand that. But yeah, so we got, what are the four fingers that are, the four fingers that are being pointed out there? I think they blamed the state. They blamed the state. They blamed the DA's office. They blamed SAPD, and then they blamed. Let's see. There was something else here about. Maybe that was the state. It might have been the state, but they just named it as like worded it as like upper level. You know. Gosh, where was it? Fellow judges are working in their hands in their own circumstance, respective courts. Criticize letting offenders out. Seeing the courts once they see it. Information from the executive. Okay, so here we go. We can't move forward without information from the executive branch from the county officials. So that is kind of the state and county officials. So there's at least 3 fingers worth, which is usually a pretty good drink. But yeah, and in the comments, everybody mouthing off about this and that, and oops, forgot to include Joe Gonzales' name. Well, I don't know what that person seems crazy. I read other stuff. There's a few people here that are trying to defend one side or the other, but the reality is, just look at what's going on. Everybody is pointing fingers. Is there any no? It's just like, hey, they're all trying to take blame off of them and make sure that they get reelected. You know, I'm doing the job that you need. They're not doing the job that you need. Okay, let's move on to one more thing here. Texas constitutional carry law impacts highlighted during D4 Public Safety Town Hall. So what's going on here is during that meeting on Monday, now what's going on here is that the media is trying to bring in the national narrative of guns bad, right? Texas open carry law may please gun owners, but 2 top law enforcement officers say has led to more gun crime. So here's Joe Gonzales and Chief McManus both saying, it's not us, it's Greg Abbott for putting all these guns on the street, right? Yeah. SAPD says violent crime in San Antonio has decreased, but McManus said it has not gone away. So this is one of those hypocritical things of like, hey, we're seeing too much gun violence, but violent crime went down. But who wrote the script for them? Joe Biden? Like, seriously? You're going to say on one hand that you did a great job, DA, in bringing down violent crime. And then on the other hand, you're going to say, but violent crime's too high from gun. All right. We got boyfriends shooting ex-boyfriends. Take that however you will. Shooting at people. We got ex-girlfriends shooting at new boy. Okay, those are things that always happen. We got sons shooting father. What they're referring to is actually recent articles that talked about these specific violent things that did happen. As for property crimes, McManus said those are up, and he's not wrong at all. You know why? Because of the cite and release stuff. When you decide that under $1,000, I believe when I talked to the property crimes department, I was told multiple things. I was told $750, $100. I was told the thresholds are like under $100. They don't even care. Under $750, they might, yeah, but it's got to be over that. And then one neighbor was told $1,000 when the guy next to him, who's crazy, a drug addict, jumped over not jumped over the fence. He messed up their vehicle, scratched it all up, and then threw a big old like cinder or rock or something like that at some safety glass and broke that. And the detectives were like, we're not going to look into it because it's got to be over $1,000. Yeah, that stuff was over $1,000. That safety glass, that custom glass that the guy does is really expensive. And the damage to the vehicle, that's expensive too. But it's this weird thing of like, I see where SAPD is not doing their job. I understand where SAPD says that the DA won't prosecute, so it's kind of like a revolving door. We definitely see the effects of it, but somebody's got to stand up for the people, because when they don't, the people stand up for themselves, and that's what they don't want. SAPD does not want you to go after your vehicle that you know has been stolen, even though their own will do it. That was recent in the earlier this year. One of the officers off duty found out that his vehicle was stolen, so he went after it with a gun. But they'll come to us and tell us to our face, hey, don't do anything like that. All right. That's bad. Anyways, all those people have access to guns. What we are seeing today, though, is the access to guns is increased exponentially because people are breaking into cars and taking guns. Okay. So let's take a look at that. They're saying that people that leave guns in vehicles are the reason why there's more guns on the street. And there's more guns on the street because the people wouldn't have left their guns in vehicles if they didn't have easy access to guns. So with constitutional carry, Texans are allowed to carry firearms with no training or license. Right. You just buy it. Right. You have a right to be able to, constitutional carry. Gonzales says he has a concealed handgun license and does not want to take away guns from people who follow the law. What we're seeing is people are having access to guns that really have no business carrying guns. I agree. You know what they're called? Criminals. They're called criminals. And you know what criminals do? Criminals do things that they're not supposed to do. Isn't that crazy? If you put a law down and a criminal doesn't want to do whatever that law is, they're like, oh, that's kind of cute. So anyways, I got this pistol. I'm walking around down the street. I got this rifle that I'm pointing at vehicles and other houses. They could talk all they want about taking guns and all that stuff, but when they're showing video, which I have sent video to the District 5 Council, which Terry Castillo and her team, they don't really care. I've sent it to the safe officer in my area. I've sent it to multiple people, neighborhood associations. Look at this guy walking down the street with the handgun. Look at this guy pointing a handgun at neighbors in their yards. Look at this guy pointing a rifle at vehicles driving by. Look, who's a known schizophrenic, drug addict, sells drugs in the area, brings all this crime to the area. Here's literal video, Joe Gonzales. Here's literal video. Why aren't we doing something about that? I'm pretty sure constitutional carry doesn't say you can walk around with a pistol in your hand. We still have basic policies and laws that say, no, you can't do that. You still have to have it in some kind of a holster. You can't just walk with it in your hand. You definitely can't point it at stuff, even if you are on your own property. If you know that there's something in the path of where you're aiming, and there are all houses all around, road close and everything like that, kids, elementary school, once again, within 1,000 feet of an elementary school, what happened with that? I thought that was a thing. Maybe it doesn't apply to Texas. I have to look that up. Yeah, apparently pointing at a rifle at vehicles and tracking, that's fine, right? Yeah. No, it's not, actually. That's against the law. But, video be damned. They probably didn't. They probably lost the video or something. Or they're going to tell me that I didn't send it. What we're seeing is people in access we need to figure out a better way to take them out of the hands of people that don't have any business with guns. Yeah, that's called laws that we already have on the books, guys. That's called going after these people that are clearly showing by pointing a gun down the street and mock shooting things that they need to be investigated. But what are you guys doing? You ain't doing anything about it. Talk. Gonzales comments come after 5 SAPD were shot in the span of 2 weeks. I knew it was 2 weeks. Nicole Golden, executive director of the nonprofit Texas Gun Sense, said the trend shows the impacts of loosened gun restrictions. It's dangerous for law enforcement. It's dangerous for Texas communities. So they want to restrict my right, your right, to have guns because they don't want to follow up on the things where they know there's a law being broken. I just stated one. I got video. I would show you, but unfortunately it shows my property and I can't do that. I can't. The people that need to know already know. Nothing's happened. So once again, it's a national, but it's the national agenda kind of thing. It's the big out there in social media, gun bad, any gun out there, bad. They would rather that the residents have no guns along with the criminals. Guess what? So would I. I would rather that we all don't have guns to have to protect ourselves. I think guns for marksmen and all that stuff, what's wrong with that? But to have to feel that we need to use it against each other in our own country? No. The guns are there in case we need to deal with external, issues and also internal issues, such as an oppressive government, such as oppressive things being done without constitutional, that breaks the laws of the Constitution, breaks the amendments. We have laws on the books that are not being prosecuted. People are not being arrested for. And even if they're being arrested, they're just going to come right back out, do it again. This guy's been talked to that walks around with a gun. The father's been talked to. What do you think that's done? Nothing. You know why? Because he's realized, and I've watched as he's escalated, he's realized that nobody cares what he does. The people on the street can care all they want. But because we are defanged from actually taking care of the problem, even if it happens on our own, like it's self-edit there. He realizes that there's no consequences for his actions, regardless. Drug selling, prostitution, like having prostitutes and, using them and all that stuff, having them come over. Theft, he did a whole bike theft thing and all other kinds of things. They would steal stuff and use his place as like hey, we're going to use this to hide, put our stuff for the time being until we figure out where we can hide it and, dole it out and all that. All the people he's associated, like really nice cars come by. This guy's more popular than, I don't know. He's got all kinds of people coming to his place, yet he's a young man, and you got old junkies walking up down over there. You got people in really nice vehicles. It goes back to how do you know the wind is blowing? You look at all of everything around it. How do you know drugs are being sold and something wrong, something not right's happening? You look at what's going on. What are the factors that you can see? A guy walks around with no shirt, no shoes, or a mask. He puts himself up in masks all the time and carries around machetes, knives, guns. And he's seen with these druggies, junkies, and he goes into the places where, like, abandoned houses and, sets fires and all that stuff. Falls through the cracks. Not for lack of us telling you that it's happening, but because you're doing nothing about it. So all of this stuff, ain't nothing going to happen. I'll be surprised if something happens. That's it. That's it for me. Share this.